It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, April 2nd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that really went through the ringer in that game. Fedotov's in, Frost ties it up, big overtime loss.
The clock is running.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology, coming to us from the Wells Fargo Center. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A lot going on, Russ. Jamie Drysdale's back in the lineup, and I think we saw some changes with the line. So Couturier was moved with Forster and Konechny. Now that did not last long, as we saw, because he left the game with an injury.
Probably a
And
shoulder.
seemed like it, the way he was holding it on the way off the ice.
I think he's got two injuries now. I think he has a shoulder and the knee thing. Like, I don't know if we're going to see him back.
Yeah, I think that is going to be a huge loss for the Flyers if that is indeed the case. But I think that, this game was so upside down and backwards in a lot of ways, especially if you look at that second period for the Flyers, which was just brutal. And at the same time, absolutely thrilling to see Ivan Fedotov check in for the first time and see what he could do.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot there. So, yeah, you kind of threw him in there. He did well. I mean, look, with the lapses the Flyers have and have been having, it doesn't matter who's in net for that. Like, it just doesn't matter who it is. There's going to be problems. But no, I thought he did all right. I mean, I did see a few things that could have cost him, but it didn't. And so he's got things to learn. Now he's got to learn on the fly here. And I think the tougher thing now is to figure out game to game, and the goalies are going to have to figure out game to game who's playing. And that could sometimes become an entanglement. So, yes, he had a good game. He did well. But now this other thing has now crept into the room.
Yeah, and it begins to look like a little uncomfortable for the Sam Ersson side of this picture
Right.
as well, because this is like, last game he likely would have gotten pulled if the circumstances were different. They did pull him after 2 goals in this game, which I think, I think the Martin goal he could have had,
Sure.
but I think that, again, as you said, the Flyers were not playing great in front of him. So I thought it was an interesting decision. And I think, for the most part, it worked out as far as, him getting accustomed to things. I saw him give up some rebounds early, but I think he figured it out as he went a little bit in terms of those decision-making things.
Mm-hmm.
But, at the same time, like that second period, just brutal. And the Flyers had 0 high danger chances after 40 minutes of play.
Right.
0.
Yeah, I mean, the Islanders have a good defense. We talked about it. They're fast. They get the puck out. They know how to do that. What was interesting for me is I was in both rooms. And so, like, Noah Cates was like, look, he was asked the question, when the backup came in like that, he's just thrown in there. Did it change the mindset of the team to play more defensive, whatever? And Kate said it should have, but we didn't play that way. And so that's a telling thing right there. So, and then the other thing was, and Anders Lee's been through the ringer, right? He said something that is a really great quote. He basically just said, look, after that goal that we gave up, you have to decide at that point what you're going to do. And we responded right away. And so, like, that's a big thing because, that could have killed some teams. Like, Morgan Frost's goal could have killed them mentally, but it didn't. And so, like, there's that thing on both sides that the Flyers don't have that kind of leadership and experience yet. They just don't. And that's something where the Islanders were able to gut this one out because of it.
Yeah, and those things do take time. So,
Yes.
I think there's something to that. It's interesting to me that first quote you said came from Noah Cates, because I
Yes.
thought in particular this was one of his best games in a
I think it was his
long
best game
time.
of the year. I thought he looked like sort of the guy from last year. And look, he's a smart player, but he did need to get on the board. He got on the board. I felt like that was a big thing, a big relief for him. There were other things going on in that game, though. Again, from a coaching perspective, as an example, when you only play Nick Deslauriers 6 minutes, you're taxing the other guys. The Islanders,
I literally have that in my notes. So
yes,
great
well,
minds.
because as an example, you could look at the Islanders' minutes that were more evenly distributed. So that's one thing.
And especially so with Couturier out. So that's essentially
Correct.
You're playing with 10 forwards.
Right. And they were getting gassed during that 6-on-5 period. They were.
Yes.
So there's that. And they were gutting it out, and I give them credit. The other thing is they were trying to slide in Scott Lawton because they left Garnet Hathaway out there 6-on-5, and the refs were like, no, you waited too long. You can't do it. That's a coaching mistake to have Hathaway out there instead of Lawton, 6-on-5.
Yep.
And that, and it took a little while to get him back in. Why? Why did that happen? Like, those kinds of things are little things that I think the Flyers coaching staff does screw up on. And special teams, I mean, we could talk about it. It's easy. It's low-hanging fruit at this point for both, for the PK and for the power play.
Yeah, I think so. I just felt like the ice time management for the last 5 minutes of regulation was just like, I did not understand what was going on there. And I understand like wanting to keep your top guys out there to get the best opportunity, the guys that are most likely to score a goal, but you got to rotate them a little bit at least. And that did not happen. But God knows they were trying. And
oh no, they were trying. I mean, no
yeah,
doubt.
I don't fault them at all. And I'm like devastated for Morgan Frost right now.
Yeah, sure. You feel bad for him, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, just that game time goal was such a good play, and he had a really good game and was trying to make things happen. And I just saw some really smart play throughout the game. And to your point, could have been gassed, and that's what caused the turnover at the end, in OT like that. And it's hard for Fedotov to get properly set when it comes that quickly. So I get it. The upshot here, though, is that the Flyers do get this 1 point out of this. The Islanders get 2, so that makes them 1 point closer to the mix. Meanwhile, Detroit wins in regulation in Tampa, so
that's a big one.
They're 1 point behind the Flyers at this point.
See, and that's where I say the 1 point kind of hurts, because if the other teams that are chasing you start to get wins, that 1 point doesn't hold up for very long. And it didn't tonight. Like right there, you're like, they're, now they're within a point. So there's a lot of games left. And like I said, I think it's going to get frustrating for the players because they have all this time off now, and games are going to be being played.
Yep. And they're not going to practice again until Wednesday. So, I think they do need the day off, but at the same time, it's like,
but they just had a day off. How many days off do you want to give them? Like, they're on a losing streak. How many days off do you want to give them? Like, they just had a day off the other day, and now you're going to give them another day off. Like I said, I think I would go over things in the film room simply because we all talk about it. When the power play is out there, there's so much indecision, so much just lack of structure that it's just crazy.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's more to talk about on today's show. We are going to take a look at the week that was for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms and their playoff race, which was actually,
Much happier times for them.
yes, yes, much better news with a 3 out of 4 point weekend. We will get to that coming up next.
The sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel's making it even more exciting to get in on the action. Because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you could you could use to bet the tourney, MLB, NBA, NHL, and so much more. Take UConn; they're a guarantee. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Are you watching sports on cable TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you all the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On tomorrow's show, we will be answering your mailbag questions, so make sure to get them in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on Twitter, or comment on our YouTube channel. So the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, I think things are looking a little brighter there. Of course, Felix Sandstrom was sent back down. He got his first game back this weekend, and one of the bigger questions coming into this weekend of the two games that the team had was Hunter McDonald, because if we recall from last week, he had signed the PTO
Right.
and then a contract for next season with the Phantoms as well. Got injured like 2 shifts into his pro debut, which was
Right.
devastating. And so he was out for the entire weekend, but he did get back into games this weekend, which was really good to see. And he was paired up with Ethan Sampson
Okay.
as a D pairing, which I thought was pretty solid. Not like the greatest number of minutes. They were the third pairing, but I
Right.
think that's a
Right.
great way for him to get started. And I would say he looked really good. Like, he was just keeping his game really simple.
Well, that's what
All
he is anyhow. I mean, yeah.
right. But he was just, I think, focusing on positioning and making sure that he wouldn't get beat defensively,
Right.
and that, he was using his physicality because of that size, right?
Mhm.
But I just think he was playing a simple, smart game.
Yeah, and that's what he does. I mean, that's honestly what he does. So that's good. Yeah, I think that's good. It's a good way to break him in. Don't put him in too high. No, that's smart.
Yeah, so very glad to see him in. I think he's comfortably in the lineup now. We'll see what happens just, as things progress
Mhm.
toward the end of the season here. But that was a really, really good sign. Um, Matt Brown is still injured. Zane Wisdom got hurt in warmups on
Yeah,
Friday, which was he got hit with a puck or something. So it was just really horrible, horrible luck. So he was out for both games
awful.
as well. We had also talked a couple weeks ago about Jacques Bouquet and Tyler Gratton, who were
Yes.
signed to the Phantoms on AHL deals. They had played their first weekend in Reading, but they were recalled to the Phantoms this past week. They've practiced, but they have not gotten in any games yet, which I understand because,
Right.
there's limited spots and they need to
Yes.
practice with the team for a while. But I'm really hoping we'll see them in games this week.
Yeah, it would make sense. It would make sense at least if in one game they get to play. They get to play once, that's good. Break them in slow. But
Yep.
yeah, all right. So they're getting some fresh legs in there, which could help them down the stretch.
Absolutely. We're talking about that with the Flyers.
Right.
It holds true for the Phantoms as well. As far as the results go for the Phantoms, they won at Syracuse and then they lost in overtime to Wilkes-Barre Scranton. So 3 of 4 points for the weekend, which, would have liked to have gotten all 4 points because they were ahead at one point in that game, Wilkes-Barre Scranton.
Yeah.
But 3 out of 4 points ain't bad, especially considering that Syracuse is like one of the top teams in the AHL.
No, I mean that's a good weekend. It is. They're holding steady. Uh, they just they have to continue to do that and not give Springfield like an opening. That's really when you're being chased. That's what you have to do.
Right. So this is where we stand right now in this playoff picture. So they are in sixth place in the division, which is in the playoffs right now.
Right.
They are now 2 points ahead of Springfield with one game in hand. So it's close. It's not,
It's close.
ideal, but it's good. Springfield again has been not great. So I think, the Phantoms are continuing to luck out there. Now, the other thing that's happening is Hartford is also kind of tailing off here at the end of the season. It'll take a lot to catch them, but it's not impossible, especially if Hartford continues to lose. They are 5 points ahead of the Phantoms right now with the same number of games remaining. So, it's not likely, but it's
Right.
definitely possible here.
Yeah, I'm not going to even think about that.
Right. So the Phantoms have 9 games to go for the season. And, I'm looking at the remaining opponents here for the games left, and they're going to face Hershey twice, including one game tonight. This is a 4-game week for the team, so that's why I'm thinking the new guys are going to get in because that's
Right.
just a lot of games, right?
Oh yeah. Yes.
So they're facing Hershey twice, Providence, Cleveland, Wilkes-Barre Scranton twice, Bridgeport twice, who has been their Achilles heel, who's the worst team in the division, but they can't seem to get solid victories against them. And so, you look at the schedule and the standings, and you're like, oh, that's great. That should be guaranteed points. Not with this team and not the way they've been matching up all season. And then they have one game against Charlotte, who are also very good, and they've been streaking up the standings right now and actually
Right.
just overtook Wilkes-Barre Scranton in the division for, I believe, the 4th slot.
Yeah, this will be
So
interesting. This is not
or
gonna,
3rd, yeah.
you got to just control your own destiny. That's really the key here.
Yeah, I think that is the big picture here. So, I think there was a long time that we were counting this team out of the
Hmm.
playoffs, and it's really good to see that that has not come to fruition.
Right.
I think, and I think that there's definitely some guys that I really want to see get that playoff
Oh
experience,
yeah. All
even
of them.
even if it's a tough series. And so when you look at the couple of games that the Phantoms had this past week, you can see them trying to make some adjustments here.
Hmm.
So in the game against Syracuse, first off, it was like the first game they'd won at Syracuse in like 7 years or something like that.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Syracuse has been good. They have
Yeah.
just been good for that long. But Cooper Moretti had a hat trick in that game. And I think they adjusted the penalty kill a little bit
Yeah.
because they got 2 shorthanded goals on 1 penalty kill
Yeah, that's
in that
crazy.
game.
I have seen that happen in college once. And yeah, it doesn't happen very often, just ever.
Right, and the way that they did it was actually really amazing because, there's kinda like 2 ways that a shorthanded goal happens. You have a really good play where somebody picks off a pass and goes streaking down. So that was the first one with
Right.
Jacob Gaucher, and
Yeah.
that's how he scored. And then Tanner Lazinski, who had a really good game, he just had a really good stick that forced it, and he got ahead. And then the goaltender just came out too far. And when the goaltender comes out
Right.
too far, and then Lazinski drops the puck back to Brooks, the goaltender's out of position like by 12 feet to begin
Yeah.
with, and
Yeah.
then Brooks just like knocks it in.
Just
So it was like
imagine if
2
the Flyers had
yeah.
Luzinski.
I know. That's the thing. I was just like, that was such a heads up play by Tanner Lazinski that I was like,
Yeah,
I would like that on the Flyers.
yeah, yeah. If they'd have given him a chance on those last call ups, I think he'd have stuck. I mean, he
Yeah.
is that he's. I mean, he just needed to be healthy this year.
Right. Now, on the flip side of that, they also gave up 2 power play goals. So the penalty kill was like hit
Yeah,
or miss in that
it's that way
game.
with the Flyers too. Now, all of a sudden, the penalty
Right.
kill pendulum has swung the other
Yeah.
direction.
So Tanner Lazinski had 2 assists in that game. Really, really solid
Yeah,
game. I
and
know, like,
and at the time that we were counting the Flyers out, they didn't have Marody. He's one of their best players. I mean, he's a big
yep.
deal.
So, yeah, he has hit 50 points for the season now with 18 goals as well.
It's a nice
I
year.
think, yeah, Ollie Lixel is the only one that I think has more goals than him at this point, and Lixel's up with the Flyers. So I
Sort of.
think that, well, that is another issue. But so Marody has a real good shot of
He
catching
does.
up to Lixel
Oh yeah.
in this week. There is one other experiment that they did that I want to talk about in the next segment related to switching up positions for some key prospects. We'll talk goaltending as well, and the week ahead coming up next. It is an important point in the season, Flyers fans. The team is still in the playoff hunt, but regardless of where we are in the standings, I want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. You can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, and MLB and college football on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick whether NHL superstars like Connor McDavid, Nikita Kucherov, or Nathan McKinnon, or Flyer standouts like Travis Konechny will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, or more in any given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you have to correctly predict the outcome of 8 players' stats. You heard me. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail those picks so you can start winning big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. All right, so continuing our Phantoms Tuesday report here. One of the things that they did this weekend in both games, they created a line with J.R. Avon, Elliot Deno, and Garrett Wilson, but they put J.R. Avon at center and Elliot Deno on the wing, which both of these guys have been struggling. There's no doubt of that. And they decided to kind of switch it up to see if getting them in different spots with slightly different responsibilities could help stabilize their games and maybe get them going. Just in terms of them as prospects and what their ceilings could be. What do you think about that move?
Uh, I think it's a last ditch effort for Denoye. I think they probably realized he's not the player he was last year, so let's try and free him up. And I think it's a good move for him because maybe just all that responsibility playing center is just taking away too much of his offense. I think Avon,
Yeah.
who I think is a better player anyhow, can handle it. And so I like the move. I wonder though if Denoye doesn't do well, what the organization is going to think of that.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think the first game, it was taking them a while to get
Sure.
things in order, right? I think they looked a lot better, a little more comfortable in the second game on Saturday, and they did contribute to one of the goals that Ethan Sampson actually scored his second goal of the season, which was
Okay.
good to see. But J.R. Avon and Elliot Deno were the assists on that goal. And it was a really good play, good heads up play, I think. And so I saw little moments, especially in that game on Saturday, where they were starting to get the rhythm of it
Right.
a little
Right.
bit better in terms of who was like first in the zone versus chaser and just like all of those little things that you have to like build muscle memory for. But I think it's an interesting experiment. I wonder like if they had done this like 2 weeks ago, what the impact would have been.
Right. It would be more. It might have been a good move then, a better move. I agree.
Yeah, so I think that's something to keep an eye on if they continue to do that this week in their lineup. And I do think if you're going to do that, like as much as I harp on Wilson for taking too many penalties and all of that, putting him on the line with those two because he can take care of all the other business to
Right.
allow them to have the space for it. I think that does make a large degree of sense. So I
Yeah.
don't hate that combination
No,
for those reasons.
I don't either.
I want to talk about Samu Tuomaala as well. He's been on a line with Rhett Gardner and Brendan Furry, continuing that from last week. And he did get on the board in the game against Wilkes-Barre Scranton. So 2 weekends in a row with him scoring goals. Obviously not as prolific, but I still think that's good. So he gets those little rewards on a
Yeah.
more regular basis.
No, that is good. It really can help during the season, especially on a stretch run. Could really help.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then the goaltending is a little bit of a mixed bag here.
Yeah.
We had Cal Peterson in one game, and then Felix Sandstrom checked in to the game on Saturday. Cal Peterson was fine. They did give up 2 PK goals, and so those really aren't necessarily on him, right?
Yes.
But I just feel like and there's this whole Alexei Kolosov thing hanging over our heads with, is he here? Is he gonna end up playing? Like, what's going on? Then you have like Parker Gahagan sent down to the Royals, and so now it's Peterson and Sandstrom. But if Kolosov comes in, like, what happens? Like, what do we do?
They just shorten the roster. They're going to have 3 goalies because they can't really do anything else that I can see.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. But both goaltenders had 4 goals against in each of their games, which is, like I said, not ideal. But
No.
Cal Peterson, 2 of them were on the PK. I believe that one of them for Felix Sandstrom was on the PK
Sure.
as
You
well.
still got to be your team's best penalty killer, though. Like
Yeah,
I've been starting to look at penalty kill percentage for guys, and that's become a really interesting stat.
yeah. I mean, it is part of it is how much do your guys clear out net front for you,
Hmm.
or avoid being a screen for you, right?
Sure,
But
that's a part of it. But a lot of times,
but
this is what I'd like to bring up though to people, especially fans about goaltending. Uh, just because a goalie's not seeing the puck doesn't mean he shouldn't stop it. That's why positioning is important. So there's many times goalies don't see the puck and they make saves. So I do want to point that out.
yeah, that is fair. That is absolutely fair. So, like I said, this is a 4-game week for the Phantoms. They play tonight at Hershey, and then they've got 3 games in a row this weekend: Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that is a lot of ice time,
A
a
lot.
lot of opportunity here
Yeah.
to. I hope they rotate the lineup, especially in the 3-game stretch. Friday they play Providence. Saturday they play Cleveland, who is second in the North Division. Hershey and Providence have already clinched playoff spots, by the way. They're
Yeah, but
1
it's
and
not like
2
they're going to
in the
play the
Atlantic.
Phantoms easy, especially
No,
Hershey.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's gonna be
Yeah.
really hard. So
Yeah.
these are good teams. So
Yeah.
yeah, like Cleveland is second in the North Division, and then their last game on Sunday is like at Wilkes-Barre Scranton.
Oh boy.
It's gonna be a disaster. Like in
Especially
a
on the last
physical.
end of it.
Yes,
Yes.
it's just gonna be a very physical game with a
Yeah.
lot of pushing and shoving.
He should be. See, if I'm Lappy on game 3 is when I'd put in some of the other guys. So this way they can have some fresher legs for 4, where that's going to be a tough game, like a tough
Yeah.
game physically.
Yep, absolutely. One quick note on the Frozen Four. It is now a set, and we've heard inklings that Massimo Rizzo might return to the Denver lineup in time for that on April 11th and 13th.
Yeah, it's up in the air. We don't know for sure, but nobody has ruled it out. So, we'll see. And like I said, he's a really important guy. Now, if I were to make a choice, like let's say the Flyers had to make a choice and it's Rizzo or Brodzinski, then I have to take Rizzo. But, I'd like to see them get both those guys. So we'll see. We'll see how it works out when the Frozen Four is over. But now that's it. They have to wait until after then.
Yeah. So a lot of waiting for Denver and for us to know what happens there. There's a lot of waiting for us in terms of the Flyers because they don't play again until Friday. So a lot of nerve
Oh yeah,
wracking
they're gonna be
scoreboard
watching
watching.
scoreboard. Yeah, that's the worst
Yep.
thing.
The absolute worst. So tomorrow we will answer your mailbag questions, and we'll check in with junior hockey and what's going on in those playoffs, especially our London Knights boys and doing well in the OHL side of things. And if you want to send us those mailbag questions, you can do so via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league like Locked On NHL. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.